Today's service marks a change at First Church. We say goodbye to our associate minister, Jake. Soon, he will begin a new ministry working with the Anti-Defamation League. We send him out with our love and our prayers. We're proud of him, and we thank him for his 2 years during a pandemic in Guilford. Change is the one consistent and constant aspect of life. One of the most difficult parts of leaving a church is affirming new boundaries. When a minister leaves, they do not come back for weddings or funerals or to visit. Why? Ministers take vows not to show favoritism or partiality. And when they leave, they generally have a new ministry, vocation, or they retire. They know that they have left a legacy, and they leave room for those to follow to build on that ministry and to expand it. It is with much love and prayers that ministers respect the boundaries, encouraging the congregation to continue growing in a new and different, unique ministry, one that is yet to be. Change can be challenging, and yet it opens us up to the Spirit and to the possibilities ahead. So on this Sunday, October the 10th, 2021, we celebrate Jake's ministry with us, remembering the words from Esther, for such a time as this. And for such a time as this, Jake has been faithful and committed to this church. May we thank him for brainstorming with staff and me about ministry in pandemic times. Thank him for consolidating and expanding our communication process and technology. Thank him for his meaningful and beautiful prayers with individuals. Thank him for his love of Broadway, history, and the sound, and the ways that he has expressed that love through sermons. Jake, we truly thank you. Go forth with our blessing and our love. And as this day, as we send Jake forward, we pause also to welcome the Spirit to be with us. We welcome all of you who are watching from home, from gardens, from kitchen tables, from dining rooms, and those who will be in person this Sunday. Welcome. And now we invite us to roll our shoulders back and to open our hearts and our minds and continue with this blessed day, a day in which we say goodbye and a day in which we say hello, a day of love and of grace. And we take a deep breath in, we breathe in the breath of God, and we breathe out the love of God. And as we do that, we hold all that is life in our hearts and our minds, and we continue with this morning's passage. It's taken from the book of Psalms. So teach us to number our days, that we may get a great heart of wisdom. Return, O Lord. How long? Have grace on your people. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, that we may rejoice and be glad all of our days. Make us glad for as many days as you have given us, and for as many years as we have witnessed sorrow. Let your work be shown to your people, and your glorious power to their children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish the work of our hands upon us, yet establish the work of our hands. May God grant us wisdom and understanding to this passage.
Thank you, Ginger. It has been an honor to work with you and to be part of this congregation in ministry. I will never forget the sound, the connection, that kind of goodbye. It will stay with me forever. My husband's grandmother in Maracaibo, Venezuela, whom they called Uga, died in July. She was a devout Catholic who attended Mass as often as she could, even daily at certain times in her life. But because of the pandemic and the dangerous situation in Venezuela, a priest was not able to bring Uga her last rites. This was very upsetting to Gerhardt, my spouse, and the family. And so they organized a way to say goodbye, to offer their love, prayers, and faith in family. They turned, like we all have during the pandemic, to technology, and together with neighbors and family in Venezuela, Virginia, Brazil, Florida, Connecticut, and elsewhere, for 9 nights, for an hour every night, there was the sound of the Rosary Novena for the dead throughout our home. For 9 nights, I listened to them as they prayed the prayers from continent to continent, passing from voice to voice, from stanza to stanza in Spanish, with purpose. They chanted Uga's goodbye. They chanted her into their memory. They chanted her through prayer into their hearts and into heaven. They together prayed her spirit into the light of heaven. I watched my own husband, who isn't typically very religious, sitting at the computer, taking his turn dutifully with his family, reading, reciting, praying. Technology and the lessons of the pandemic brought them together and helped them to say goodbye, reach out to the sacred, and make up for the gaps left by the church. It was the best funeral I ever attended. The very next month in August, Gerhardt's other grandmother, this time in Caracas, Venezuela, whom they called Mimi, suddenly died. She was the one who taught him to make his amazing flan, which in Venezuela is called quesillo. I'm sorry, First Church, that we're leaving too soon and there was so much pandemic that most of you will never have the chance to taste Gerhardt's quesillo. It is the best. And so for another 9 nights, having learned now a new pattern of how to say goodbye differently across continents and with technology, we prayed, chanted, and recited rosaries, this time for Mimi. I will never forget the sound, the connection, the goodbye. It will stay with me forever. It was the sound, however, of everyone talking at the same time in a Zoom meeting. You all know what that sounds like, at least those of you on church council here at First Church who have still not figured out how to mute yourselves. But in this case, that talking over each other was on purpose, the cacophony of sound. It was messy and imperfect, but it was a communal, intentional goodbye. What I learned about saying goodbye from those 2 months of funeral rosaries was that it doesn't have to be perfect. It might be messy and untimely, and yes, technology makes it feel like right now a little different. But these moments when people leave us matter. How we honor these liminal spaces also matters. How do we say goodbye in a world that tells us virtually that there's no longer such a thing as goodbye? We are all immortal on the internet anyhow. Today, while nothing like the goodbye to a grandparent, I think Gerhardt's family showed me the power of a whole, real, and authentic goodbye in community. Perhaps the way the Psalms were actually meant to be said and sung. There is a seriousness, a messiness, and a finality when a minister leaves a congregation as well, especially when it isn't for the clear area of another parish setting. Scripture, luckily for us, is filled with lessons about goodbyes. This isn't new. Our psalm for today, like all of the psalms, is a very ancient communal prayer and a song. As I've said before in other sermons, the psalms are a book originally meant to be sung in community by congregation. They come in many genres, but they were all songs. We have lost the original notes and harmonies and chords to history, but we still have the words. These words have become the basis of our poetic side of faith, our imaginations and poetry in religion. It is for this reason that almost every memorial service I have done over these past 8 years of ministry probably well in the neighborhood of 40 to 50, have almost all included the 23rd Psalm. The Psalms somehow speak to us about life and death and meaning over and beyond political and theological difference. The words are hauntingly human, and they speak to the boisterous cries of life today from Psalm 90. Turn, O Lord, how long? Have compassion, God. Why is another person leaving? They also speak to the hope and joy of life. O God, let your work be manifest to us, and your glorious powers, love, life, laughter, song, service, care, congregation, community, nature, sky, earth, sound, and sea, be manifest through the children. Our psalm today, number 90, are song lyrics for the soul, and it's a good summary of it all. You all know by now how much I find the sacred in the lyrics of songs, be it LGBTQ anthems or Broadway tunes. And I find that also in the lyrics of these songs, the Psalms. In a time like today when we say goodbye as minister in church, what is our communal prayer? Psalm 90, verses 12 and 17 is our prayer, or at least my prayer for today. Dear God, teach us to count our days so that we may gain a wise heart. Let your favor be upon us and prosper for us. Prosper for us. Oh God, please make it all worthwhile, the work of our hands. Oh, make it worthwhile, the efforts, the work that we do in this life. First Church, my goodbye prayer from this psalm is so simple. I pray that we may all learn to count the importance, the preciousness of every day for living in the moment and the connection and relationship with each other and the divine. And so we leave, after that, the rest to God. Oh, prosper the work of our hands. All we can do really is count the days, pay attention to the moment, seek wisdom, work hard, knowing that in the end, out beyond the horizon, it's not all in our control. This psalm for me is the scriptural equivalent of the benediction that I have offered here almost every other Sunday now for over 2 years. Life is short, and we don't have much time to gladden the hearts of those who travel the way with us. So be swift to love, make haste to be kind, and may the God of peace be with you always. So today I leave you as a minister. I leave you with the hope that all of the work that we did with databases and finances and communications and video editing mattered. But in the end, I leave that to God. I pray that the words that I've spoken from this pulpit and with you all in individual settings may have had some meaning, but I leave that too with God. I hope that the outside-of-the-box way of doing confirmation and faith expressions may have helped even one of those kids pay some attention and maybe find some healing for their future along the way. It's not going to be easy in this world, but I leave that too with God. Today I say goodbye in a world when we avoid saying goodbye. How often do you remember actually saying the words goodbye to someone? Not just bye or something else. The word goodbye comes etymologically from the Old English for seeing someone away with hope. It means literally, God be with ye, goodbye. It's a giant contraction. It's a prayer in a word. It's a mantra in a phrase. It's a chant. It's a mini psalm. We avoid this prayer because in it we see a mirror of our own mortality, the finitude of it all. We prefer ciao, so long, farewell, see ya, see you soon, bye, bye-bye, or text me. Text me is so often our last word. We live in a world of social ghosts rather than prayers of God's presence. Goodbye, God be with you, sent with hope. Today, as Ginger pointed out, isn't a text me or a so long, but a prayerful goodbye. Ghosting is not the process of dressing up for Halloween as a ghost. That is actually a lot less scary. Ghosting is the way we are now being enculturated and normalized to say goodbye. Goodbye is so final and hard to say and sad, so we substitute it with easier words. Ghosting is when we don't text. It's when we just vanish, disappear from social media or email or phone contact without a formal and appropriate communal goodbye. It can be done on purpose, by negligence, or by mutual ignorance. It would be easier, wouldn't it, today, if we just ghosted as clergy, and if relatives, when they left, just sort of vanished. We just pretend it never existed, or that they're still out there, accessible. But I think we need goodbyes, not just ghosts. It's healthy for us. That's what I saw with Gerhardt's family. We need psalms in our lives. We need the collective experience of corporate prayer and sending and ritualization of the sacred. I'm not the first one to say goodbye to First Church. In 1650, the Reverend Henry Whitfield, our founding minister and politician, returned to England because he felt called to be engaged in the political movement for reform for his day. He actually left his whole family in Guildford, never saw them again, and his son-in-law in charge of the church. Nepotism wasn't really a thing yet. Henry Whitfield never came back to Guildford. The Reverend Robert Treat, who founded Milford, Connecticut, where I live, was so enraged in 1662 with the king forcing New Haven colony to merge with the much more sinful Connecticut colony of Hartford, as far as he was concerned, under the new United Charter of Connecticut, that he and many of the early settlers of Milford and Branford left in protest to found Newark, New Jersey. By the way, they almost named it Milford. Often, until church and state were separated in Connecticut in the early 1800s, ministers went back and forth between politics and advocacy and church. It isn't final. It's part of our connection and history. Social reform and advocacy, like what I'll be doing, is sort of in the way church has always been done in Connecticut. I feel like our state and our world are in trouble. I need to jump wholly into the work of countering hate and extremism with all I have to offer, whatever limited amount that might be. It feels important. It also feels, looking at history, like an extension of how we have always done church and ministry in this land of steady habits and bold ideas called Connecticut. This Tuesday, well, what was today when I wrote it, while writing this sermon, I found out that my last living grandmother also died. Her name was Pat Golightly. It was a pretty quick turn. You all would have liked her. Before the pandemic, she'd planned to come to Guildford. In August, even as we were still attending the Novena Rosary Zoom calls, Gerhardt and I made a trip to Colorado to say goodbye to my grandmother, and we knew this really was the last time we would see her. When we left, we said unequivocally, goodbye. We left her in the hands of God, knowing we wouldn't see her again in this lifetime. My mom, who works for hospice, her way of saying goodbye was actually cleaning and preparing the body of her mother in these past few days at the funeral home. I know I'm starting on a new great adventure. To my new work, I take my UCC ordination, which I intend to retain, and my roots, now firmly established here on this granite shore. Today we do not ghost each other, however. It is with the courage and hope that we truly say goodbye. God be with ye. Goodbye, First Church Guildford. I will miss you. I will especially miss Ginger. But I will never forget how I've been shaped by you and your history and this pandemic ministry together. I say that Ginger and I were a pandemic ministry survival team, always collaborating, innovating, and changing. So thank you all for your colleagueship and friendship, especially to the rest of the staff: Penelope, Judy, Bill, Sandy, Mark, and Marie, and all those who come alongside us as volunteers and advocates. I will never forget the sound, however. The first time I really heard a psalm. First time I ever really heard that kind of doing a goodbye. It was a messy sound over Zoom, but it was ancient too. It will stay with me as Gerhardt and his family prepared their grandmother's way into forever and into the memory of the universe. Goodbye. A community psalm said with love, hope, and confidence. Goodbye, Guilford. May God be with ye. Amen.
May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rain fall softly on your fields, and until we meet again, may you keep safe in the gentle, loving arms of God. For everything there is a season, a time for meeting, a time to say goodbye. In all things, God is near, always guiding your way. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rain fall softly on your fields, and until we meet again, may you keep safe in the gentle, loving arms of God. For everything there is a season, a time for loving, a time for letting go. In all things, God is near, always guiding your way. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rain fall softly on your fields, and until we meet